The night Patricia Whitmore stood in my backyard, screaming that my evening campfire was a public safety hazard and aesthetic nightmare. I was roasting marshmallows with my 8-year-old grandson and teaching him the constellation. 4 months later, that same woman would be calling noise ordinance officers about the 10,000-watt amplifiers I'd positioned to turn her pristine suburban paradise into the loudest outdoor concert venue in county history. But before we get to the part where Metallica covers echoed off her kitchen windows at volumes that rattled picture frames 3 blocks away, let me explain how a simple campfire turned into the most spectacular act of legal revenge my neighborhood had ever witnessed. Picture the perfect American suburb, Meadowbrook Hills, where every house looks like it stepped out of a home improvement magazine. Every lawn is measured with rulers, and every driveway is pressure-washed weekly. I'd moved here 3 years ago after my divorce, buying a corner lot with mature oak trees and enough space for my kids to visit with their families. The house came with a stone fire pit that the previous owners had built in 2015, professionally installed, properly ventilated, and positioned safely away from structures and property lines. During my first summer, I discovered the pure joy of evening campfires, the crackling of seasoned oak logs, the smell of wood smoke mixing with honeysuckle, the way firelight made everything feel peaceful after long days at the engineering firm. My neighbors seemed to enjoy the ambiance. The Johnsons next door would wave from their deck while I tended the fire. The Martinez family across the street often brought their kids over to roast hot dogs and hear my absolutely terrible ghost stories. Even old Mr. Henderson, who complained about everything, admitted that my campfires reminded him of better times. Everyone loved the evening fires. Everyone except Patricia Whitmore. Patricia lived in the crown jewel of Meadowbrook Hills, a 2-story colonial with professionally manicured landscaping, solar pathway lights arranged in perfect geometric patterns, and a 3-car garage that she treated like a museum display. She'd been HOA president for 6 consecutive terms, running unopposed because nobody else wanted to deal with the endless meetings and neighborhood drama. Patricia treated HOA covenants like constitutional law and viewed any deviation from her vision of suburban perfection as a personal attack on civilization itself. She drove a white Mercedes SUV that never showed a speck of dirt and wore business suits to neighborhood barbecues. Our first interaction had been pleasant enough. She'd welcomed me to the neighborhood with a basket of muffins and a 40-page HOA covenant manual. "Just some light reading to help you understand our community standards," she'd said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. For 3 years, I'd followed every rule, paid my dues on time, and maintained my property to magazine-worthy standards. My evening campfires were a quiet hobby that hurt nobody and brought families together around something as old as human civilization itself. Patricia was about to teach me that some people view harmless joy as a threat that must be eliminated. The confrontation began on a perfect September evening. I'd just gotten home from work and was building my usual small campfire when my grandson Danny arrived with his parents for dinner. At 8 years old, Danny was obsessed with astronomy and camping, so our evening ritual involved identifying constellations while marshmallows turned golden over oak coal. "Grandpa, is that the Big Dipper?" Danny asked, pointing toward the northern sky while his marshmallow caught fire for the 3rd time. "Close, buddy. See how those stars make a square with a handle? That's the Big Dipper, part of the Great Bear constellation." The fire was crackling peacefully, sending occasional sparks spiraling up toward the stars. The smoke smelled like autumn and childhood memories, drifting lazily eastward on the gentle breeze. Danny was finally mastering the art of marshmallow rotation when the sound of aggressive footsteps on gravel announced incoming trouble. Patricia appeared at the edge of my backyard, wearing a navy business suit that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage. Even at 7 p.m. on a Thursday, she looked like she was heading to a board meeting. Her silver hair was shellacked into an immovable helmet, and she carried a manila folder thick enough to serve as a weapon. "Mr. Thompson," she announced, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to immediate obedience. "We need to discuss your fire situation." Danny looked up from his marshmallow with the confusion of a kid encountering adult insanity for the first time. "Hi, Mrs. Whitmore. Want to see the Big Dipper?" Patricia didn't acknowledge my grandson's existence. "Mr. Thompson, this open flame activity is creating multiple violations of community standards and safety protocols." I glanced at my perfectly contained fire pit, then at Danny, then back at Patricia. "I'm not sure what you mean. This is a properly installed fire pit, and we're following all safety guidelines." Patricia opened her folder with ceremonial precision and withdrew a stack of photographs that made my stomach drop. The pictures showed my property from various angles, documenting my evening campfires with the thoroughness of a surveillance operation. Some photos were taken from the street, others from what looked like her second-story windows, and a few appeared to be shot from inside her backyard. "I have been documenting safety violations and covenant infractions for the past month," Patricia announced, spreading the photos across my patio table like evidence at a trial. Open flames within 25 feet of structures, smoke emissions affecting neighboring properties, and potential fire hazards during elevated risk periods. Danny whispered, "Grandpa, why does the lady have pictures of our campfire?" "Good question, kid." "Patricia, this fire pit was installed by licensed professionals in 2015. It's been inspected by the fire department and approved by the city. I have all the permits and documentation." "Permits don't override HOA covenants," Patricia replied, with the smugness of someone who'd memorized the rulebook. Section 8.4 clearly states that open flame activities must not create nuisances, safety hazards, or impacts to neighboring property enjoyment. Your fires are producing smoke, ash, and potential fire hazards. I looked at my small, well-contained fire, producing a thin wisp of clean smoke. "Patricia, this is a normal campfire. People have been having campfires in backyards for decades. People have also been violating noise ordinances, dumping chemicals in storm drains, and parking recreational vehicles in driveways," she snapped. "That doesn't make it acceptable in a premium residential community." Patricia pulled out a prepared document that looked suspiciously official. "I'm issuing a formal cease and desist order regarding all open flame activities on your property. Continued violations will result in daily fines of $100, legal action, and potential forced compliance measures." The document was signed with her title, Patricia Whitmore, HOA President and Community Standards Enforcement Officer. Community Standards Enforcement Officer? That wasn't a real title. "This is my grandson's favorite activity," I said, trying to keep my voice calm while Danny looked increasingly upset. "We're not hurting anyone or creating safety hazards." "Mr. Thompson, your personal preferences don't supersede community welfare. I suggest finding indoor activities that don't impact neighboring properties." As Patricia gathered her photos and marched back toward her house, Danny tugged on my sleeve with tears in his eyes. "Grandpa, does this mean no more campfires?" Looking at my grandson's disappointed face, while watching Patricia's retreating figure, I felt something shift inside my chest. This wasn't about safety or community standards. This was about control. Patricia had decided that my peaceful evening tradition somehow threatened her vision of suburban perfection. "Don't worry, buddy," I said, putting my arm around his shoulders. "Grandpa's got some ideas." But as I extinguished our fire and helped Danny gather his astronomy book, I had no idea that Patricia was already planning her next move, one that would involve fire department inspections, city code enforcement, and a legal strategy designed to make my life so miserable that I'd give up campfires. Forever. The fire marshal showed up unannounced on a Tuesday afternoon, driving an official red SUV that looked ominous parked in front of my house. Captain Steve Rodriguez climbed out wearing turnout pants and a serious expression that suggested someone had convinced him my backyard posed an imminent threat to public safety. "Mr. Thompson, I am here to conduct a safety inspection of your outdoor fire installation following complaints about code violations and potential hazards." My heart sank. Patricia had escalated from HOA warnings to city fire department investigations. "Captain Rodriguez, I think there might be some confusion. My fire pit was professionally installed and has been operating safely for years. I understand that's your position, sir, but we've received detailed reports about unsafe fire practices, improper clearances, and potential code violations. This inspection is mandatory following formal complaints." Steve spent 2 hours examining every aspect of my fire pit setup with scientific precision. He measured clearances from structures, tested the stone construction for heat damage, documented the ventilation and drainage systems, and even took soil samples to check for fire contamination. My fire pit passed every test. "Mr. Thompson, your installation exceeds current safety codes," Steve admitted, closing his inspection folder. "Clearances are appropriate, construction is professional grade, and your fire management practices are exemplary. I don't see any violations." Relief flooded through me like cool water. "So I can continue having evening campfires?" "Legally, yes." However, Steve's expression grew troubled. The complaint included allegations about excessive smoke production, ash dispersal onto neighboring properties, and reckless fire practices, endangering community safety. Someone provided very detailed documentation claiming you were violating multiple city ordinances. "Did the person filing the complaint provide their name?" Steve consulted his paperwork reluctantly. "Mrs. Patricia Whitmore, 847 Elm Ridge Drive." She submitted a comprehensive report with photographs, dates, and specific code citations. She also requested follow-up inspections to ensure continued compliance. Follow-up inspections. Patricia wasn't just trying to shut down my campfires. She was building a harassment campaign involving city officials. "Captain, my fire pit has been operating the same way for 3 years. Nothing has changed except Mrs. Whitmore's attitude toward my evening fires." Steve nodded knowingly. "Mr. Thompson, I've been a fire captain for 15 years. I've seen every kind of neighbor dispute involving outdoor fires, barbecue grills, and fire pits. Most of the time, complaints are about genuine safety concerns. But sometimes," he paused diplomatically, "sometimes people use fire safety as a weapon in personal disputes." That evening, Patricia called with her trademark false concern. "Mr. Thompson, I noticed the fire department was at your house today. I do hope everything is all right?" "Everything's fine, Patricia." The fire marshal confirmed that my installation exceeds all safety codes. "Oh, how wonderful," she replied with syrupy sweetness that made my teeth ache. Of course, passing one inspection doesn't guarantee future compliance. Fire conditions change, equipment degrades, and safety practices can deteriorate over time. I'm sure the fire department will want to monitor the situation closely. The threat was crystal clear. Every time I lit a campfire, she'd call the fire department claiming new violations until they got tired of responding to my property. "Patricia, what exactly do you want?" "I want you to be a responsible neighbor who considers how your activities impact the community. Someone who values harmony over personal hobbies. My campfires harm no one and bring families together. My grandson looks forward to our evening fires all week. Mr. Thompson, children adapt to new activities quite easily. Perhaps you could find indoor hobbies that don't involve smoke and fire. Board games, television, reading, lots of perfectly acceptable alternatives." After she hung up, I sat on my deck watching the sun set over our suburban paradise and trying to process Patricia's vision of acceptable family activities. According to her logic, Anything that produced smoke, light, or potential inconvenience to neighbors should be eliminated in favor of sterile indoor pursuits. I pulled out my phone and called my old college roommate, Mike Chen, who'd become a successful entertainment lawyer in Nashville. We'd stayed in touch over the years, and I knew he specialized in venue licensing and outdoor event permits. Mike, hypothetical question. If someone wanted to host an outdoor concert in a residential neighborhood, what would that look like legally? Are you planning to become a rock promoter? Mike laughed. Because if you are, you'll need proper permits, noise ordinances compliance, and probably some very understanding neighbors. Just curious about the process, Mike launched into professional mode. Outdoor concerts are regulated by city noise ordinances, which typically allow higher decibel levels for permitted special events. If you get proper permits, special event license, amplification permit, parking arrangements, you can legally host concerts that would normally violate noise rules. How loud are we talking? Depends on the permits, but special events can get exemptions for significantly higher noise levels. Rock concerts, festivals, celebration events, the city wants to support community activities, so they're pretty accommodating for properly permitted events. After Mike hung up, I sat in the growing darkness, thinking about Patricia's harassment campaign and her apparent belief that any outdoor activity she didn't personally approve of should be banned from the neighborhood. Patricia wanted quiet evenings with no smoke, no fire, and no activities that didn't fit her suburban aesthetic. She was systematically trying to eliminate everything that made outdoor living enjoyable. Time to show her what noise ordinances really looked like when properly exploited by someone with resources and a growing grudge against HOA bullies. But first, I needed to do some research into city permit processes, sound ordinance exemptions, and the specific regulations that governed outdoor entertainment in our quiet suburban paradise. What I discovered would turn Patricia's peaceful evening routine into a sonic experience she'd never forget. The city code enforcement officer arrived during my lunch break on Thursday, driving a white pickup truck with official emblems and carrying a clipboard that suggested serious business. Gary Walsh introduced himself as a 20-year veteran of municipal code enforcement who'd seen every possible violation of residential property standards. Mr. Thompson, I'm here to investigate reported violations of outdoor burning ordinances, potential fire hazards, and non-compliance with residential property standards. I invited Gary into my backyard, where he spent an hour examining not just my fire pit, but every aspect of my property maintenance. He measured fence heights, checked drainage systems, documented my landscaping compliance, and even tested my sprinkler system for water pressure violations. Sir, your property exceeds municipal standards in every category, Gary concluded after his thorough inspection. Fire pit installation is professional grade. Landscaping meets all requirements, and I don't see any code violations. So this complaint was unfounded? Gary consulted his paperwork with obvious reluctance. The complaint was very detailed, 6 pages of alleged violations with photographs and specific ordinance citations. Someone spent considerable time researching municipal codes and documenting claimed infractions. Let me guess. Patricia Whitmore. I can't comment on complaint sources, but Gary looked around my meticulously maintained property with the expression of someone who'd seen too many frivolous neighbor disputes. Sir, whoever filed this complaint either has very different standards of property maintenance, or they're using code enforcement as a harassment tool. That afternoon, I discovered just how far Patricia's campaign had escalated. My mailbox contained citations from the health department about potential groundwater contamination from ash disposal, a letter from environmental services about air quality violations from residential burning, and a notice from the city planning office about unpermitted recreational structures. Every citation was eventually dismissed after inspections confirmed that my property was in full compliance with all regulations. But each investigation required time off work, coordination with city officials, and stress about potential fines and legal complications. Patricia was weaponizing the entire municipal bureaucracy against my evening campfires. That evening, she appeared at my property line wearing her standard business armor and carrying a different folder, this one labeled legal documentation in official-looking letters. Mr. Thompson, I trust today's inspections were educational. They confirmed what I already knew: everything about my fire pit is legal and properly maintained. Patricia's smile had all the warmth of a January morning. Of course it is. This time. But you'd be amazed how quickly code compliance can change. New regulations get passed, safety standards evolve, environmental requirements become more strict. It's really quite unpredictable. Are you threatening me with false code violations? I'm simply pointing out that maintaining compliance with municipal standards requires constant vigilance. Someone who values community harmony might choose activities that don't require such intensive oversight. Patricia opened her legal folder and withdrew a document that made my blood pressure spike. I've also been researching property deed restrictions and neighborhood covenant enforcement mechanisms. Did you know that persistent violations can result in liens against property titles? The document was a property line template with my name and address already filled in, waiting only for specific violation details and filing dates. Patricia, you've escalated from HOA complaints to false government reports to threatening property liens. This has moved way beyond campfire disputes. Mr. Thompson, I've simply been documenting a pattern of non-compliance and community disruption. If you'd prefer to avoid further complications, the solution is quite simple. Give up my legal right to have campfires. Choose activities that don't impact neighboring property values or community standards. After Patricia left, I sat by my legally compliant, professionally installed, completely safe fire pit and tried to understand how evening campfires with my grandson had become a suburban war involving multiple government agencies. I pulled out my phone and called Mike Chen again. Mike, I need to ask about noise ordinance permits and outdoor event licensing. Specifically, how loud can legally permitted events get in residential neighborhoods? Dave, are you actually planning a concert? Because that would be awesome. I'm planning to exercise my legal rights as a property owner in ways that my HOA president might find educational. Okay. Here's the thing about special event permits: cities love community activities. Properly permitted outdoor concerts, festivals, and celebration events get significant exemptions from normal noise restrictions. We're talking about 85-90 decibel levels during permitted hours, which is basically rock concert volume. And residential neighbors can't complain? They can complain all they want. But if you have proper permits, you're operating within legal limits. The city actually encourages community events that bring people together and support local businesses. After Mike hung up, I sat in my backyard listening to the peaceful suburban silence that Patricia was so determined to preserve. Every evening, sound crickets chirping, dogs barking, teenagers playing music was part of normal neighborhood life. But according to Patricia's standards, my quiet campfires constituted unacceptable disruption worthy of harassment campaigns involving multiple government agencies. Time to show her what actual noise disruption looked like when someone with resources decided to exercise their legal rights to the absolute maximum extent permitted by municipal ordinances. But what I didn't know was that Patricia had been monitoring my phone calls through methods that would make the NSA proud, and she was already planning a preemptive strike that would make code enforcement citations look like friendly suggestions. The registered letter from Whitmore Legal Associates arrived on a Monday morning, delivered with the ceremony of a federal subpoena. The envelope was thick, official-looking, and designed to intimidate anyone who wasn't familiar with legal theatrics. Inside, I found 12 pages of pseudo-legal language threatening lawsuits for property damage, nuisance violations, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The document was signed Patricia Whitmore, legal representative, Whitmore Legal Associates, which was apparently her home office, and a collection of internet law templates. But the real shock was the attached evidence, dozens of photographs of my property taken from various angles, detailed logs of my campfire activities with dates and times, and what appeared to be air quality measurements taken from different locations around the neighborhood. Patricia had been conducting surveillance operations worthy of a private investigator. My phone rang before I'd finished reading the legal threats. "Mr. Thompson," Patricia's voice carried the triumphant tone of someone who believed they'd just played a winning hand. "I trust you've received our legal documentation regarding your ongoing violations of community standards and property damage claims." "Patricia, this isn't a real legal document. Whitmore Legal Associates isn't a law firm, and you're not an attorney. I'm representing multiple affected property owners in preparing formal legal action against your persistent nuisance activities. We have documented property damage, reduced property values, and health impacts from your smoke emissions." Multiple property owners? Who else is complaining about my campfires? The Martinez family has documented smoke damage to their outdoor furniture. The Johnsons report respiratory irritation from regular smoke exposure. Mr. Henderson has photographed ash deposits on his vehicle. We're building a comprehensive case for both individual and class action litigation. I knew for a fact that the Martinez family loved my campfires. They'd brought their kids over just last weekend. The Johnsons had never complained about anything, and Mr. Henderson's car was parked in a garage every night. Patricia was either lying about neighbor complaints or had convinced people to fabricate damages they'd never actually experienced. "Patricia, what do you really want?" "I want you to sign a legally binding agreement to cease all open flame activities on your property, acknowledge responsibility for neighborhood impacts, and contribute to a community fund for property remediation." She was trying to extort money while forcing me to give up campfires forever. That afternoon, I called my actual attorney, Jim Morrison, who'd handled my divorce and knew Patricia's reputation from previous neighborhood disputes. "Dave, I've seen Patricia Whitmore's legal theatrics before. She tries to intimidate people with fake law firm letters and manufactured evidence. But here's the concerning part: she's getting more sophisticated. These photos suggest she's been conducting systematic surveillance of your property. Is that legal?" Photography from public areas is generally legal, but some of these appear to be taken from private property or with telephoto lenses in ways that might constitute harassment. Combined with the false legal threats, she could be crossing into actionable territory. Jim reviewed Patricia's documentation, professional thoroughness. "Dave, she's built an impressive file of manufactured complaints and exaggerated claims. But she's also documented that your activities are completely normal and legal. This could backfire spectacularly if she actually files anything in court." That evening, I made a decision that would change everything. I called Mike Chen one more time, but this conversation was about more than hypothetical permits. "Mike, I want to host the loudest, most spectacular outdoor concert legally possible in my backyard. Full rock band, professional sound system, lights, fireworks if possible. I want proper permits for an event that will make Patricia Whitmore regret ever hearing the word nuisance." "Dave, are you sure about this?" That's a serious escalation from campfire disputes. She's been photographing my property, threatening fake lawsuits, and filing false reports with multiple government agencies. She's turned my peaceful retirement into a legal war zone. Time to show her what actual noise ordinances look like when properly exploited. "Okay, I'm in. Let's build you the most legally compliant noise nightmare in municipal history. Over the next week, Mike worked with local officials to secure every permit needed for a major outdoor concert event. Special event license, amplification permit, parking coordination, fire safety approval, and exemptions from normal noise restrictions during permitted hours. The concert was scheduled for Saturday night, featuring a local rock band called Decibel Damage that specialized in high-energy covers of classic rock anthems. Professional sound equipment capable of 90 decibel output. Light show with LED arrays visible from space. And yes, fireworks completely legal with proper permits and safety coordination. Patricia's surveillance operation had missed the most important detail. While she was documenting my campfire violations, I was documenting her harassment campaign and building a legal counterattack that would turn her quiet suburban paradise into the loudest concert venue in county history. But as I finalized concert preparations, I had no idea that Patricia's final gambit would involve accusations so outrageous that they'd bring federal investigators to my doorstep just hours before showtime. Saturday dawned with the kind of perfect autumn weather that made outdoor concerts seem divinely ordained. Crystal blue skies, temperatures in the low 70s, and just enough breeze to keep the air fresh without interfering with sound equipment. By 10 a.m., the setup crew was transforming my backyard into a professional concert venue that would have impressed stadium managers. The stage went up first, a 20-foot platform positioned to face directly toward Patricia's house, ensuring optimal audio coverage of her property. Professional sound towers flanked the stage, their 10,000-watt amplifiers gleaming in the morning sun like instruments of sonic warfare. LED light arrays stretched between my oak trees, creating a canopy of multicolored illumination visible from several blocks away. Mr. Thompson, called Jerry Martinez, the sound engineer Mike had recommended, this system can push 90 decibels easy, which is your permit maximum. At that volume, you'll be audible from about a mile radius. How's the coverage toward the east? I asked, nodding toward Patricia's pristine colonial. Jerry grinned as he adjusted speaker angles with the precision of an artillery gunner. Sir, anyone in that house is going to feel like they're sitting in the front row at Madison Square Garden. By noon, Patricia's white Mercedes was parked at the end of her driveway like a general surveying an impending battlefield. I could see her on the phone, probably mobilizing every government agency she could think of to shut down my legally permitted concert. The first official visitor arrived at 1 p.m. Officer Mike Santos from the County Sheriff's Department, driving up my driveway with the resigned expression of someone who dealt with too many Patricia Whitmore complaints. Dave, I'm sure you know why I'm here. Let me guess. Patricia called about noise violations for a concert that doesn't start for 6 hours? Mike examined my permit documentation with professional thoroughness. Special event license, amplification permit, fire safety approval, parking coordination. This is more paperwork than most wedding venues require. You're covered for everything, including fireworks. So there's no problem? Legally, no problem at all. Personally, Mike grinned. I bought tickets. My wife loves classic rock, and word is spreading that this is going to be epic. By 3 p.m., the parade of official inspections began in earnest. Fire marshal, noise ordinance officer, building inspector, and someone from the city planning office who seemed genuinely impressed by the professional setup and complete documentation. Each inspector reached the same conclusion. Everything was permitted, safe, and legal. Patricia appeared at 4 p.m. wearing what looked like funeral attire black suit, severe expression, and carrying a folder thick enough to serve as body armor. She was accompanied by 2 people I didn't recognize, but who wore the same grim expressions of righteous indignation. Mr. Thompson, she announced from my property line, this illegal concert is a clear violation of residential zoning, noise ordinances, and community standards. You must shut down immediately. Patricia, I have all required permits for a legal outdoor concert. City officials have inspected and approved the setup. This is residential property, not a commercial entertainment venue. I pulled out my permit documentation and held it up for her entourage to see. Special event license specifically allows residential properties to host permitted entertainment events. The city encourages community activities that bring neighbors together. One of Patricia's companions, a thin man with nervous energy, stepped forward. Sir, I'm Harold Grayson from the State Environmental Agency. We've received reports about potential noise pollution, violations, and environmental impact from large-scale outdoor events. The State Environmental Agency? Patricia had escalated to federal-level complaints about a backyard concert. Mr. Grayson, I'd be happy to show you my environmental impact assessment and noise abatement documentation. Everything's been cleared by appropriate agencies. Harold spent 30 minutes reviewing my paperwork, while Patricia paced behind him like a caged predator. When he finished, his conclusion was identical to every other inspector: completely legal, properly permitted, and professionally managed. At 6 p.m., as the sun began setting and early concert-goers started arriving, Patricia played her final card. Mr. Thompson, she called across the growing crowd of neighbors and music fans, this ends tonight? One way or another. Is that a threat, Patricia? It's a promise. You've pushed this community to the breaking point with your selfish disregard for residential standards. Tonight, you'll learn what happens when someone goes too far. As Patricia stalked back to her house, I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the evening breeze. Her voice carried the certainty of someone who'd been planning something catastrophic, and I suddenly realized that her morning phone calls might not have been limited to noise complaints. At 7 p.m. sharp, decibel damage took the stage to an enthusiastic crowd of about 200 people, neighbors, friends, local music fans, and quite a few folks who'd heard about the suburban concert through social media. The band launched into a thunderous version of Born to Be Wild that sent sound waves rolling across the neighborhood like audio tsunamis. The volume was spectacular. Windows rattled 3 blocks away. Car alarms triggered in sympathetic resonance. And Patricia's house, positioned directly in the acoustic path, received the full 90 decibel impact of professional concert sound equipment. Between songs, I could see Patricia's house lit up like a Christmas tree, with every light blazing and shadows moving frantically behind drawn curtains. Her phone was probably melting from the number of calls she was making to complain about legally permitted concert volumes. Then, during the band's explosive version of We Will Rock You, I spotted flashing lights racing up Cedar Creek Road, fire trucks, police cars, and what looked like a federal response team with equipment I'd never seen before. The cavalry was arriving, and Patricia was about to discover that her final gambit had backfired more spectacularly than she could have possibly imagined. The convoy of emergency vehicles screeched into my driveway at exactly 8:47 p.m., just as decibel damage was launching into an earth-shaking version of Thunderstruck that made my oak trees vibrate in sympathetic harmony. Fire trucks, police cruisers, an FBI van, and something that looked like a hazmat response unit surrounded my property with enough flashing lights to signal aircraft. Agent Sarah Mitchell from the FBI emerged from the lead vehicle, wearing tactical gear and carrying equipment that suggested serious federal business. She approached me through the crowd of concertgoers with the expression of someone who'd been called away from dinner for what better be a genuine emergency. Mr. Thompson? I'm Agent Mitchell. We received reports of a large-scale public disturbance involving potential terrorist activity, illegal weapons, and threats to public safety. The music stopped as Jerry Martinez spotted the federal response team and cut power to the sound system. 200 concertgoers turned to stare at the unfolding drama with the fascination of people watching history unfold. Agent Mitchell, This is a legally permitted outdoor concert with all required city approvals and safety inspections. Sir, the complaint alleged explosive devices, dangerous crowd control issues, and potential domestic terrorism activities at this location. Domestic terrorism? Patricia had accused me of planning terrorist attacks because I'd organized a backyard concert. Agent Mitchell examined my permits while her team conducted a professional assessment of the concert setup. 20 minutes later, she delivered her findings to the crowd. Patricia, who'd emerged from her house to watch the federal response, and probably half the neighborhood. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a legally permitted community event with proper city approvals and professional safety measures. There are no explosive devices, no weapons, and no threats to public safety. However, Agent Mitchell's voice took on an edge that made everyone pay attention. Filing false reports about terrorist activities is a federal crime punishable by up to 5 years in prison. The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of Patricia's world crashing down around her. "Agent Mitchell?" Patricia called out from her position near the street. "I never used the word terrorism. I reported suspicious large-scale activities that appeared to threaten community safety." Agent Mitchell consulted her notes with the precision of someone who documented everything. "Ma'am, your complaint specifically mentioned explosive devices preparation, large crowd control concerns, suggesting potential violence, and activities consistent with domestic terrorism planning. Those are direct quotes from your report to federal authorities." Patricia's face went through several shades of red before settling on something resembling panic. "I was concerned about fireworks and crowd safety issues." "That's reasonable community vigilance." "Ma'am, fireworks are specifically listed in Mr. Thompson's special event permit, which was publicly filed and available for review. Professional crowd control and safety measures are clearly documented. Your report either demonstrates profound ignorance of legal permitted activities or deliberate false reporting to federal agencies." Fire Chief Bobby Martinez, who'd arrived expecting to battle a major emergency, looked around the professional concert setup with obvious frustration. "Mr. Thompson, this is the 3rd time this month we've responded to false emergency calls from your address. Each time, we find legal activities being misrepresented as public safety threats. Chief Martinez, I apologize for the wasted resources, but I'm not the one making the false reports." Bobby turned toward Patricia with the expression of someone who'd finally reached his limit with neighborhood drama. "Ma'am, filing false emergency reports is a misdemeanor offense. Wasting federal resources on fabricated terrorism concerns is significantly more serious." As the emergency vehicles began departing, Agent Mitchell approached Patricia with the controlled calm of someone delivering life-changing news. "Ma'am, making false reports to federal agencies about terrorism activities is not a neighborhood dispute, it's a federal crime. You'll be receiving a visit from our investigators, and I strongly suggest you consult with legal counsel." After the federal cavalry departed, Decibel Damage resumed their set with renewed enthusiasm. The band dedicated their next song, a thunderous version of another one, Bites the Dust, to neighbors who think they can shut down legally permitted rock concerts with fake terrorism reports. The fireworks finale at 10 p.m. was absolutely spectacular. Professional pyrotechnics, synchronized to the stars and stripes, forever that lit up the entire neighborhood in patriotic splendor. Every explosion sent shockwaves across Patricia's property while staying completely within legal noise and safety limits. As the last firework faded and the crowd began dispersing, I noticed Patricia's house had gone completely dark. Her Mercedes was still in the driveway, but every window was black, as if she'd retreated to some interior bunker to contemplate the ruins of her harassment campaign. The next morning, I found a handwritten note in my mailbox. "Mr. Thompson, I apologize for the misunderstanding regarding your concert event. I have decided to step down as HOA president and will be taking a break from community involvement. I hope we can coexist peacefully in the future.